My 18-year-old Latino gardener opens my bedroom door every night. There are moments in life when the boundary between right and wrong becomes dangerously thin. When you start questioning if what you're feeling is acceptable, or if it's a desire you've buried for far too long. This is one of those stories. I never expected that hiring an 18-year-old gardener for my house in the suburbs would change my life. His name is Mateo. Tall, with sun-kissed skin, short dark hair, always messy from the wind, and eyes that seem to read my every thought without me saying a word. Day after day, I watched him work outside, shirtless under the sun, completely unaware of the storm he was stirring inside me. But things shifted late at night, when the rest of the world was asleep, and I heard the soft click of my bedroom door opening. Every night, around the same time, the door handle would turn, slowly, and there he was, Mateo, standing in the dim light of the hallway, wearing nothing but loose sweatpants, barefoot, with that same unreadable expression on his face. What started as confusion became curiosity, and soon, obsession. Why was he doing this? Was it some kind of game? Or was he silently waiting for me to react, to invite him in, to cross a line neither of us could come back from? If you've ever been in a situation where temptation knocks, literally, and you're too afraid to answer but too desperate to ignore, then stay with me. Because what happened between me and Mateo will make you question everything you thought you knew about limits, desire, and the one person you swore you'd never fall for. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications. This story, you won't want to miss what happens next. I had always been someone who liked routine. Wake up at 6, run 3 miles, quick shower, coffee with 2 sugars, then work from my home office. Everything in my life felt predictable, maybe too predictable, until Mateo showed up. He started working in my yard about 3 months ago. I hired him through a small landscaping company in town. The first day he arrived, I noticed him right away. He was only 18, with a lean but athletic build from all the manual labor, skin already tanned by the summer sun, and messy black hair that fell across his forehead no matter how many times he pushed it back. What stood out most wasn't his body or his face. It was the way he looked at me. At first, I thought I was imagining it. Maybe it was just me projecting things I shouldn't. After all, I was 32, twice his age. But every time I passed by the window, I'd catch him glancing toward the house, toward my room, sometimes holding that gaze just a little too long before going back to trimming the hedges or mowing the lawn. We barely spoke at first, just small exchanges about the garden. I'd ask if he needed water. He'd nod and thank me with that quiet, almost shy voice of his. But at night, that's when things started to change. It was a Tuesday. I remember because I had stayed up late answering work emails. The house was silent. The only sound was the hum of the ceiling fan and the occasional cricket outside. I had just turned off my laptop and stood by the window, looking out at the backyard where he worked earlier that day. And then I heard it. The softest click. I froze. My bedroom door was slowly opening. For a split second, my heart raced with panic. Who the hell was coming into my room at this hour? But when I turned, it was him. Mateo. He stood there in the dim light coming from the hallway, barefoot, wearing nothing but loose gray sweatpants hanging low on his hips. His chest was bare, muscles faintly outlined under his light brown skin. His hair looked even messier than usual, like he'd just gotten out of bed, or never went to sleep at all. I opened my mouth to say something, to ask why, to tell him this wasn't okay. But no words came out. He didn't move. He just stood there, staring at me with that unreadable expression, like he was waiting for some kind of signal, like he wanted me to decide what happened next. I swallowed hard. My pulse was loud in my ears. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, I cleared my throat. "Is everything okay?" I asked, my voice low and shaky. He didn't answer. He just gave a small nod, barely noticeable, then turned around and left as quietly as he had come in. I stood there for several minutes after he was gone, staring at the door, my heart still racing. Was it some kind of mistake? Maybe he got the wrong room. Maybe he was sleepwalking. But deep down, I knew none of those excuses made sense. The hallway lights were off. The only room with light spilling out was mine. He had opened that door, knowing exactly where I was. I lay awake the rest of the night, staring at the ceiling, my mind racing with questions I couldn't answer. And the worst part? A small, dark part of me wanted him to do it again. By the time the sun came up the next morning, I had convinced myself it would never happen again. That it was a one-time thing, some weird accident. But that was before the second night, before the pattern started, before I realized that whatever game Mateo was playing, I was already too deep in it to stop. The next day, I tried to ignore it, tried to pretend it hadn't happened. I buried myself in work calls, emails, and whatever else could distract me from the lingering memory of Mateo standing in my doorway. But every time I passed by the window and saw him outside, shirt off, skin glistening with sweat, pushing the lawnmower or trimming the hedges, that image from the night before burned deeper into my mind. He didn't act any different during the day. Not one glance that lasted too long, not one awkward pause. If he felt embarrassed or even remembered opening my door, he didn't show it. And maybe that was what made me even more curious. By the time night fell, I was a mess of nerves. I kept telling myself there was no way it would happen again. But still. I left my bedroom door unlocked. Part of me hated myself for doing that. I lay in bed with the lights off, scrolling mindlessly on my phone, pretending I wasn't waiting for something. Listening, imagining, wanting. It was just after midnight when I heard it. That same soft click. My heart jumped to my throat. I rolled onto my side, pretending to be asleep this time. I kept my breathing steady, slow, like someone deep in sleep. But my mind was racing. Through the thin slit of my barely opened eyes, I saw the door crack open, just like the night before. And there he was again, barefoot, same sweatpants, same bare chest. But this time, he stepped inside. Only 2 steps, just enough for his silhouette to be fully framed by the dim light from the hallway. He stood there for a moment, watching me. I could feel his gaze sweeping over me, pausing at my face, my chest. My skin tingled. Every inch of me was on fire. I wanted to move, to say something, to break the silence, but I didn't. I stayed still, waiting to see what he would do next. After what felt like forever, he turned and walked away, closing the door behind him with the same slow, deliberate care as before. The air in the room felt heavier now. My heart was pounding so loud I thought it might wake the whole neighborhood. I sat up in bed, breathing hard, staring at the door like it might open again at any second. What was he doing? Was this some twisted joke? A dare? Or was it something else? The next morning, I watched him from the kitchen window while he watered the plants near the fence. His back muscles moved with every shift of his shoulders. The waistband of his pants sat low, revealing just a hint of skin above his hips. I grabbed a bottle of water and walked outside, forcing myself to act casual. "Morning," I said, my voice a little too cheerful to be natural. He looked up, wiped sweat from his forehead with the back of his hand, and gave me that same small, unreadable smile. Morning. That was it. No hint of last night. No apology. No awkwardness. I handed him the water. Hot day. Yeah, he replied, twisting off the cap and taking a long drink. I stood there for a second longer, hoping he might say something more, but he didn't. That afternoon, I caught myself sitting at my desk, staring at nothing, my thoughts replaying those 2 nights over and over again. I kept wondering, was I imagining things? Could he be sleepwalking? But deep down I knew. Sleepwalkers don't stand in your doorway, half-dressed, 2 nights in a row, and they definitely don't step inside, pause, and watch you like that. By sunset, I had made a decision. If it happened again tonight, I wouldn't pretend to be asleep. I'd sit up, face him, and finally ask the question that had been haunting me since this all began. But I wasn't prepared for how fast things would escalate, or for what he would say when I finally confronted him. The sun had barely set, and already I felt the tension building in my chest. Every noise in the house seemed amplified. The creak of the floorboards, the soft hum of the air conditioning. Even the distant sound of Mateo's footsteps outside made my pulse race. I kept checking the clock on my nightstand. 10:45 p.m. Then 11:30. Midnight. I sat on the edge of my bed, restless. Every time I thought about laying down, the image of him standing in my doorway came flooding back. I didn't want to pretend anymore. I wanted answers. By 12:15 a.m., I was wide awake, sitting up against the headboard, staring at the door, my heart thumping in my throat like it had a mind of its own. Then, I heard it. The faint creak of the floor just outside my room. I held my breath. The doorknob turned. Slowly, deliberately. And there he was, Mateo, barefoot, same gray sweatpants. This time, his hair was damp, like he had just stepped out of the shower. My stomach twisted when I realized he knew exactly what he was doing. I sat up straighter. Mateo. My voice came out lower than I expected, almost a whisper, but there was no hiding the tremor in it. His eyes locked onto mine. For the first time, there was no hesitation in his gaze, no awkward smile, no pretense. He stood in the doorway, staring at me, saying nothing. I swung my legs over the side of the bed, planting my feet on the floor. "Why are you doing this?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. He took one slow step inside, then another. I felt my throat tighten. The air in the room grew heavier with every inch he closed between us. He started, but then stopped. His voice cracked slightly, like he wasn't sure what to say next. I waited, barely breathing. "I couldn't sleep," he finally said, scratching the back of his neck like he was nervous. "So I just kept coming here." "That doesn't explain why you stood in my doorway 2 nights in a row," I said, my voice firmer now. He swallowed hard, glancing down at the floor, then back at me. "I wanted to see if you'd stop me." My heart skipped a beat. "What?" He exhaled slowly, stepping even closer until he was only a few feet from my bed. "I figured, if you didn't want me here, you'd say something, or lock the door." I opened my mouth to respond, but no words came out. The truth hit me like a slap in the face. I hadn't locked the door, not after the first night. And now, I couldn't decide if I was angry, confused, or something else entirely. He ran a hand through his damp hair, then let out a shaky laugh. "Look, I get it. This is messed up. I shouldn't be doing this. You're my boss. I cut your grass. I'm not even supposed to be in here. I stood up slowly, my legs trembling under me. Then why are you? He stared at me, his chest rising and falling faster now. Because I can't stop thinking about you. The room fell silent. That single sentence hung between us like thick smoke. I took a step back, my mind spinning. This wasn't happening. It couldn't be. But the look on his face told me it was very real. And just as I opened my mouth to say something, anything, he reached out, like instinct took over. His fingers brushed against my forearm, barely a touch, but enough to send a jolt straight through me. I froze. The air between us turned electric, heavy, loaded with something neither of us fully understood. But before I could react, before I could decide if I wanted to pull away or lean closer, we both heard it. The sharp slam of the back door downstairs. My entire body tensed. Mateo's eyes widened, and he immediately took a step back, like reality had just crashed into both of us. Someone else was in the house, and just like that, the moment shattered. For a second, neither of us moved. The sound of that door slamming downstairs echoed through the silence like a warning bell. I felt my throat tighten. "Did you leave the back door unlocked?" I whispered. Mateo shook his head quickly. "No, I'm sure I didn't." His voice was low, shaky, but urgent. A rush of adrenaline shot through me. My heart pounded so hard I thought it might burst from my chest. I grabbed my phone from the nightstand and switched on the flashlight, holding it up like it would somehow protect us both. Mateo, now fully alert, moved toward the door, peeking down the hallway. "Stay here," he said quickly, his tone suddenly more serious than I'd ever heard it. There was something protective in the way he said it, like instinct had taken over. "No way," I said, following right behind him. "If someone's in the house, I'm not letting you go down there alone." We crept down the hallway together, both barefoot, both moving as quietly as possible. Every floorboard creak made me flinch. When we reached the top of the staircase, I turned off the flashlight and let my eyes adjust to the darkness below. The kitchen light was off. The living room, dark. But the back door, wide open. Cold night air drifted in, making the curtains near the door sway gently like ghostly figures. My skin prickled. "Maybe it was the wind?" I offered, barely believing my own words. Mateo shook his head again. "That door's heavy. No way it opened on its own." I swallowed hard. Suddenly there was a soft noise, coming from the side of the house, like footsteps on gravel. Mateo reacted first, moving fast toward the door. I grabbed his arm without thinking. "Wait!" But he was already halfway outside. I followed him onto the patio, scanning the backyard with my phone light. But there was nothing. No shadow, no figure running away. Just the distant sound of a car engine starting somewhere down the street. "Who the hell would come in here and then just leave?" I muttered. Mateo turned back toward me, still catching his breath. "Maybe it was a neighbor, a prank." But the tension in his face said he didn't believe that either. We stood there for another minute before finally going back inside. Mateo closed the back door firmly this time, locking it. I leaned against the kitchen counter, trying to slow my breathing. "Well, that killed the mood," I said with a nervous laugh. Mateo didn't smile. His eyes stayed on me, dark and unreadable. "I shouldn't be here," he said after a long pause. "In your room, at this hour. It's not right." I opened my mouth to protest, but he held up a hand like he needed to get the words out before I could interrupt. "I don't want you to think I'm taking advantage or doing something stupid." He swallowed hard, his Adam's apple bobbing. "But the truth is, I keep thinking about you. Every night.
And when I lie in bed, I can't stop wondering if you're thinking about me too. I froze. My breath caught somewhere between my chest and my throat. I wasn't expecting him to say that. Not tonight. Not after all this. I took a step closer. Mateo, this isn't easy for me either. My voice was low, almost breaking. I'm older. You work for me, and after tonight, I don't even know what's safe anymore. His eyes flickered with something I couldn't quite read. Regret, or longing, or maybe both. I know, he said softly. But still, every night I end up at your door. The way he said it, like it wasn't even a choice for him. My pulse quickened. He took one cautious step closer, then another, and just when I thought he might reach for me again. My phone buzzed loudly in my hand. We both jumped. I looked down. Unknown number, at 1 a.m. Without thinking, I answered. Hello? There was silence on the other end for a second. Then a deep voice said, Keep your doors locked. Someone's been breaking into houses on your street. I froze, and before I could ask anything else, the line went dead. The message from the unknown caller echoed in my head long after the line went dead. Keep your doors locked. Mateo and I stood there in stunned silence. He looked at me, jaw tight, fists clenched at his sides. We need to check the rest of the house, he said, already moving toward the living room. I followed, heart racing. Every corner, every closet, every shadow suddenly felt like a threat. We checked every room, every window. Everything was locked, except for the back door, the one we had already found open. When we returned to the living room, I sank onto the couch, rubbing my hands over my face. What the hell is happening tonight? Mateo paced back and forth, running both hands through his hair. I don't like this. I don't like leaving you here alone. There was something different in his voice now, protective, fierce, and in that moment, I realized something. I didn't want him to leave either. Stay, I said before I could overthink it. Just for tonight. His eyes softened. For the first time all night, he stopped moving. You sure? He asked. I nodded, my voice barely more than a breath. Yeah, I'm sure. Without another word, he sat down beside me on the couch. The space between us, almost non-existent. Neither of us spoke for a while. The only sound was the faint ticking of the clock on the wall. After a few minutes, I felt his shoulder brush against mine. I didn't move away. In fact, I leaned closer. His breathing changed, slower, deeper. When I finally turned my head to look at him, our faces were only inches apart. I've been wanting to do this for weeks, he said quietly. Before I could ask what, his hand slid up to my neck, warm, strong. And then his lips were on mine. Soft at first, testing, hesitant. But when I didn't pull away, when I kissed him back, everything between us shifted. I grabbed the back of his neck, pulling him closer. He moved his hands to my waist, his touch both careful and hungry. For the first time since this strange dance began, there was no hesitation, no guessing, just raw, undeniable want. I pulled back just enough to whisper against his lips, You really shouldn't be here. He smiled, eyes still closed. I know. But neither of us stopped. We barely noticed the distant sound of sirens echoing from blocks away, or the headlights that briefly passed across my window. All I could focus on was him, the feel of his mouth on mine, the way he whispered my name like it meant something, and just when I thought this moment would last forever,
There was a sudden, loud knock at my front door. We both froze, our eyes locked, and for the first time all night, neither of us knew what to do next. The knock echoed through the house like a gunshot. We both sat there, frozen, hearts pounding in unison. Mateo's hand instinctively tightened around my waist like he wasn't ready to let go. Not now. Not after everything we'd crossed tonight. I stood up slowly, motioning for him to stay put. Carefully, I moved toward the front door, peeking through the curtain. A police officer stood on my porch. I opened the door just enough to hear him. "Good evening, sir. We're going door to door. There's been a series of break-ins in the neighborhood tonight. Just making sure you're all right." I nodded, forcing a shaky smile. "Yeah, thank you. We're okay." As soon as the door closed, I locked it tight and turned back to Mateo. He stood there now, watching me, a mixture of relief and fear in his eyes. But underneath all that, I saw something else. Something I hadn't allowed myself to believe until this exact moment. He wasn't just here because of curiosity, or boredom, or some reckless teenage impulse. He cared, and maybe, just maybe, I did too. I crossed the room and stood in front of him, placing a hand on his chest, feeling his heart beating fast beneath my palm. "We're gonna figure this out," I said softly. "You and me." His lips curved into the faintest smile. "Yeah, we will." That night, he stayed with me. Not as my gardener, not as the kid who opened my bedroom door every night, but as someone I didn't want to lose. And as I lay there beside him, staring at the ceiling in the dark, I realized something simple, but life-changing. Sometimes the people who cross your boundaries are the same ones willing to stay and protect you when it matters most. If you've ever had a connection with someone that started when you least expected, that made you question your own limits, your own rules, then I want to know. Have you ever let someone in, even when every part of you said not to? Leave your story in the comments. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next emotional story coming soon. Because sometimes the heart makes the rules.